Gentleman from Florida seek recognition.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 813 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 813, a bill to direct the Secretary of Commerce, in coordination with the heads of other relevant federal departments and agencies, to conduct interagency review and report to Congress on ways to increase the global competitiveness of the United States in attracting foreign direct investment.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Bilirakis, and the gentlewoman from Washington, Mrs. Schreier, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and insert extraneous materials in the record on this particular bill.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of H.R. 813, the Global Investment in American Jobs Act of 2023. I want to thank Representative Pence for his work on this legislation, and Representatives Eshoo and Blunt Rochester, and all the co-sponsors of this support, and their support, of course, for this very important piece of legislation. Foreign direct investment, or FDI, has proven to be critical for America's economy, and it is also an integral part of our nation's technological leadership. Still, FDI can be deterred by unnecessary barriers that prohibit its expansion from trusted countries, allies, and friendly economies. Removing these barriers will ensure that the United States remains the global leader in attracting FDI. This legislation will require the Secretary of Commerce, along with heads of other relevant federal departments and agencies, to conduct an interagency review and report to Congress on ways to increase the global competitiveness of the U.S. in attracting FDI from trusted countries. I repeat, trusted countries and economies. This is an important distinction that my friend from Indiana included, and I appreciate this, to ensure we focus on ways to increase FDI from our allies, again, from our allies, rather than countries like China, Russia, or anyone else who wants to do harm to our great country. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
From Florida reserves, the gentlewoman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume. Mr. Speaker, I rise to speak in support of H.R. 813, the Global Investments in American Jobs Act. As this legislation's name would suggest, we should work to encourage foreign direct investment that supports high-quality jobs here in the United States. Foreign direct support and investment from non-adversarial nations can be used to grow critical sectors important for our economic success and our national security, including by creating new jobs in our nation's manufacturing sector. Once the envy of the world, our manufacturing base has faced steady headwinds for the past several decades. Our nation's share of global manufacturing activity declined from 28% in 2002 to just over 17% in 2020. Investment in America's small and medium manufacturers, the bedrock of our industrial might, has also declined over the past 20 years by more than $200 billion. And in that same 2-decade period, our domestic manufacturing base has shed more than 4 million jobs. Well, it is time to reverse these trends by revitalizing our nation's manufacturing industry and bringing jobs back home. The work we did last Congress, passing the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the CHIPS and Science Act are already helping to turn the tide. The United States added nearly 700,000 manufacturing jobs during President Biden's first 20 months in office. Total construction spending on manufacturing in the United States has skyrocketed to nearly $200 billion per month, more than doubling pre-pandemic levels. Foreign direct investment can be another part of the solution to revitalize American manufacturing and job creation. Over a third of foreign investments are in domestic manufacturing, exceeding a total of $120 billion a year. This bill will ensure that we keep that flow of investment strong and that such investments support quality, good-paying jobs right here at home. I want to commend Representatives Pence and Eshoo for their leadership on this issue and urge my colleagues to support this legislation. And with that, I will reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman from Washington reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 5 minutes or as much time as he wishes to consume to the great gentleman from the great state of Indiana, my good friend, Mr. Pence.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to urge my colleagues to join me in supporting my legislation, H.R. 813, the Global Investment in Americans Jobs Act. This bill seeks to improve the attractiveness of foreign investment from allied nations and identify barriers that are holding back American competitiveness. Over 200,000 Hoosiers are directly employed by international companies, 56 of which are in the manufacturing sector. Because of our long, storied history as a leader in manufacturing, companies across the world have keyed into Indiana. Before companies started outsourcing operations to China and other countries, company towns had lifted small and rural communities across the Hoosier state. Take Cummins Engine Company, for example. I've lived in Columbus, Indiana my entire life, and nearly every family, my own included, has some connection to the company that has helped build and grow Columbus. Beyond Indiana, communities across the country share similar stories where foreign investment has lifted up communities with stable, good-paying jobs. International companies in the U.S. employ 8 million workers and over the past 5 years have created 400,000 new manufacturing jobs. As companies across the world rethink their partnerships with the Chinese Communist Party and other bad actors, we have an opportunity to leverage investments from allied nations. Importantly, this legislation would seek to uncover actions from the CCP to gain access to U.S. markets and circumvent national security laws. For decades, China has built a calculated strategy to corner global supply chains through IP theft and free market manipulation. H.R. 813 addresses anti-competitive practices of the CCP to undermine innovation and gain footholds in next-generation technologies. I'm encouraged that the Global Investment in American Jobs Act has long had broad bipartisan support, like from my colleague from California, Congresswoman Eshoo. And I look forward to working across the aisle to pass this legislation. I urge support for this bill and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Florida reserves. The gentlewoman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have no further speakers on this topic. I am prepared to close.
The speakers. Yes, please.
I would just like to summarize by saying that this is an excellent bill. There are so many ways to build up our manufacturing sector and to invest in our workforce. Many of those we've already done through the Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS and Science Act. This is another way to shore up jobs and manufacturing here at home by encouraging foreign investments from friendly nations. And with that, I'm going to encourage my colleagues to support this bill, encourage a yes vote, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
The gentlewoman from Washington yields back. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to tell you how proud I am to be able to work with these great people here on a very important bill. We need to encourage legitimate foreign investment in our country. I know that other countries create the right environment for us to invest in their countries. And it's really been a great success. We want to continue to do that, but again, we're emphasizing that these have to be legitimate foreign investments from legitimate allied countries. So with that, I commend the sponsors and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 813 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative.
Yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings of this question will be postponed.